Hey everyone, George here and welcome back to the channel. So one of the biggest questions that I get all the time is what is the best cleanup fish that you could add to your tank to keep organics down, to keep algae away, and just do a generally great job of cleaning up your tank. We're going to talk about that in depth today. Is it the auto cichlid? Is it the Cory Catfish? Is it the Pleco? Or is it all three? So let's get to it here. Let's really talk about this in depth, and I'll give you my personal opinion and share it with you, and we'll do that right now. So as I said in my intro, one of the most common questions that I'm asked regarding cleanup fish or fish that are beneficial to your tank for keeping algae down, organics, and other things that might be in your tank that are not desirable is which fish is the most beneficial to keeping all of these things in check. Now, you may be surprised at my answer, and we're going to talk about that in depth quite a bit here over the next few minutes here. Now, as you can see, these Julie catfish are working really hard, and if you look over here, you can see that this little dwarf Pleco is working really hard, and there's also some auto cichlids in the tank, which are not something you can see right now. I hope during this video I can find you some autos so that you will have opportunity to sort of see them at work as well. But I think that you can talk about all of these fish in different ways and get some perspective as to the chicken and the egg sort of theory, which comes first. So as I said in the intro, there are three different varieties of fish that I believe are very beneficial to your tank, and all of them having either multiple tasks or specific tasks to keeping your tank clean. If you look back here in between the wood, you're going to see the auto cichlid, who is really diving into the back area of the tank back here, and I'm trying to get a good shot, but if you look right here in the center of the tank, right about here, you're going to see that auto cichlid is working his way through the tank. Now, one of the most important things that autos do is they go around and they continuously are cleaning up that brown diatribe algae that all of us hate. Now, I don't get that because my tanks are either extremely well cycled before I ever add anything to them, or they're planted so heavily that they are continuously, that type of algae is continuously competing with the plants in my tank for the nutrients to get itself established. Therefore, I don't ever see that. Now also, I do sometimes seed my tanks. Now, as you can see, this guy is out in the open a little bit more than he was when we first started this video. I'm trying to get my hand in the right spot, but if you look right here, you can see there's about 3 or 4 auto cichlids in this tank. Now, they're not fish that you're going to see a lot, but like I said, they are a fish that is continuously going around and cleaning up all types of, mostly the brown diatribe algae that get into your tank. And there are several varieties of that and several degrees in which that stuff can really get into your tank. Now, the only problem that you're going to have is if you have a tank like mine where you don't have a lot of that kind of algae, you can run into a problem, and that problem can be that these fish are not getting enough nutrition to keep them alive. Now, I will also talk about this fish in another way. The auto cichlid is a fish that a lot of people buy 1 or 2 and they throw them into a tank and they expect them to do well. These fish are fish that like to school, not in the traditional sense as you would see with the tetras and that sort of thing, but they are a fish that likes to have a lot of their own kind around. So I recommend, for example, in this tank, which is a a 20-gallon cube, I recommend that you put no less than 4 and as many as 6 in here, because they're going to do much better if they do have more of their kind in the tank. Now, they will come and go, they will disappear, sometimes you will not see them for days. One of the things that I like to do to make sure that these fish are getting a well-balanced diet is to make sure that I am subsidizing their food load with other things that I know for sure that they're going to get that nutrition. And one of the products that I like to use is something right here that many of you guys are familiar with. These are algae wafers. Now, not only do they have algae in them, which is good for the autocynklid, but they also have a fair amount of protein in them as well, which gives it a well-balanced diet. So that is about as much as I can tell you about the autocynklid. I think it's really important to have, like I said, 4 to 6 of those in a tank. Now, if you have a small nano tank, there are not really better fish out there that you can use to keep the brown algae out of your tank, because these guys really are the only fish that I can think of in that small of an environment that you can get away with keeping them. You can put 2 in there and they will either do well or they won't do well. It's going to depend a great deal on how well you're paying attention and how much attention you're giving to that tank. And I don't want to spend a lot of time on this one particular fish because there's lots of other fish that we're going to be talking about here. But I think it's really important that we do take some time to really get to know the autocynklid, get to know its purpose, and understand that this fish is very important to every single tank. And I just can't stress that enough, that these fish offer something that you don't get from any other fish in your tank. So the next fish that I want to talk about, as you can see down in this corner right here, are a variety of Cory Catfish. Now, I'm not familiar with this particular species right here. In fact, they were given to me. I've had them for a while. I just have not taken the time to look them up. If anybody actually knows what kind of Cory that is, please let me know. I've looked online and I've gone crazy trying to figure it out because they look so much like certain Corys that are brown in color like this with the spots on them, leopard Corys, that kind of thing, but I really can't identify these, so I don't want to waste a lot of time on that. But if you can, let me know. Now, these here are called green jade Corys. My finger has gone out of the way because he's gone out of the camera's sight, but the green jade Cory, which you're going to see right here, is one of the most popular ones that I have in my tank, and they're a little bit bigger than a standard Cory, and I really like them because they're very, very vigorous eaters, and they do such a great job of roaming the tank and staying at the bottom, not creating a huge problem of getting in the way of other fish or fighting other fish. And to me, that's such an important factor because they're really just a fish that just sort of stays put and really just stays to itself and doesn't create a ruckus in your tank. Now, one of the things that you can have a problem with Cory Catfish is that if you are planting new plants in your tank, they are going to be very disruptive to those plants and probably create a situation where they may dig them up and you find them floating, the plants that is, floating in your tank. So be careful to try to do as much of your planting as you can when you're first building your tank. I know that we like to add things later on, and that's okay, but we have to keep in mind that when we're doing that we have to remember that some fish in our tank can be disruptive to that planting, and the Cory is one of those fish. They outweigh everything regarding those plants as far as the benefit that they have with keeping the bottom of your tank clean, keeping the organics out of your tank as far as extra food that may float down from the top from feeding or any other types of organics that get missed as far as I would say this in a way that I don't really like to say this, but if you have a fish that passes away and it's a small enough fish and you see that it's missing, but it's not so big that it's going to cause a huge spike in your ammonia or whatever, the Corys and some of the other fish that are cleanup fish in your tank will literally, within hours of that fish passing away, pretty much clean it up to the point where it becomes food to them and it does not become a problem. As you can see, in a tank like this, it can be almost impossible to find any fish that may have passed away unless it's a larger fish. These Corys here, as I said, are great little Corys. I love the coloration on them. And again, if anybody can tell me in the comment section what type and identify them correctly, I would surely appreciate it. They are great little Corys. I love them. There's 4 of them in here, and there's also 4 of the green jade Corys, which are, like I said, a little bit larger in the Cory family. But again, their purpose is so vast and so important that they are essential, I think, for any tank. Now I'm going to add a third cleanup, and it's not a fish. It's actually the Neorite snail. I was thinking about this as I was starting the video, and the Neorite snail can be one of those things that you overlook in your tank as being so beneficial that we sometimes don't think about the fact that those snails are constantly on the move, and they are constantly cleaning up any of that slime that might get on your wood or your rocks or your plants. And so they become a very important part of this system as well. So I don't want to overlook those guys. But while we're talking about this, and I've got this video up, as you can see right in the center here, you have a you have a dwarf albino Pleco. Now, what does the Pleco add to the tank that the other 2 fish that we talked about don't? The Cory Catfish or the autocynklid. The Pleco actually is extremely good at keeping the wood in your tank clean. That's an area where you don't see your autocynclids or your Cory fish doing a lot of foraging around for food, but it is so important that the wood in your tank get a good thorough cleaning. And these guys right in here, as you can see, this guy right here, I have 2 of those in here. Now they are dwarfs, they're not going to get huge, but they probably will outgrow this tank, and I will rotate them around as needed. But as you can see, he's really working on that wood piece that's in there, and it's so essential that we keep in mind how important it is for wood to be kept clean, because it's one of the places that you're going to see algae collect that is very undesirable. Typically hair type algae, blackbeard algae, any number of those kind of algae that are not diatribe algae, the brown algae that's easily eaten by the not the Plecostomus, but the autocynclids and the snails. So these guys serve a real purpose. Now, if I have to talk about which one is the most beneficial of all of these, I'm going to have to tell you that all 3 are essential for any healthy tank. And the reason for that is because they all have different jobs, and they all do their particular job uniquely to the others that we talked about here. The Pleco, as I said, is good at cleaning up the wooded areas in your tank that will not be cleaned typically by the autocinclids or the Corys. The Corys are essential for getting any organics that might end up in the bottom of your tank and cleaning those up. And the autocinclids are great at keeping that brown diatribe algae out of your tank and going along and just being generally good cleaning fish at keeping, you know, organics out, algae out, and whatever. So really, when you think about it, after what I just said here, all of these fish have a purpose that is so important to keeping your tank healthy. And I hope you will consider when you're out looking for fish that are beneficial to the aquarium, that you will keep in mind that all of these fish have their place. All of them do a particular job, and together they all keep your tank in pristine shape. If you look at this tank right here, you don't see any problems with any of that. And then the fourth point that I made, and there's a fifth as well, is that these snails down here are so important to your tank if you have enough food to keep them going. If your tank is pristine and you do not have enough slime and brown algae for them to eat, they will not survive your tank long term. Now, I've had snails die on me more than anything else, I believe, in my tank. And if anybody has an idea as to why that happens to me, I mean, it's not so bad that I don't go out and buy them, but I'm just saying that if something is going to die in my tank, it just seems to be that it's going to be that Neorite snail or mystery snail or whatever snail that you might choose, because I just don't think that they get enough of what they need to sustain them. Now, like you'll see the autocinclid going along in the front area here on this rock, and they're great for that, but you hardly ever see them on a piece of wood. So here you are with an autocinclid that's cleaning off anything that he can find on that rock area, but you'll rarely see them on a piece of wood. It's just not their thing. And if they're desperate, of course, they will search anywhere for any kind of food. As I said earlier, if you have very, very healthy tanks, which means that you have a great balance of plants in your tank. Plants are so important. I can't stress it enough how important plants are and how to keep them healthy. The more plants that you have in your tank, the healthier your tank is going to be, because they're going to take all of those bad things in your tank and utilize them as food, and that does nothing but help you to keep your tank in really pristine shape. I'm using the word pristine a lot because I am very anal about this. In my tanks, I like to have them pristine at all times, and I'm constantly looking at them every day, doing an inspection of the fish count in the tank. I know what's the inventory of the fish are in there, making sure that nothing's missing, and making sure that all of these fish are getting what they need. So, like I said, with the autocinclids, with the Pleco, and with the Cory Catfish, if you take a product like this right here and you feed it to them, I give them those types of tabs in the evenings when the lights go out, because most of your other fish are sort of in their sleep mode, and Corys, autocinclids, and Pleco are still on the hunt for any kind of food that they can find. And when those tabs drop to the bottom, they're gone by morning, and I know that all of those important essential cleanup fish in my tank are being well cared for and are healthy because they're getting every single thing that they need to keep them going. Anyways, we're going to talk about this in summation in just a minute here. And before I do, I want to make sure everybody hits that subscribe button. I want to make sure you hit the like button and also leave a comment. Those comments are so important because they tell me what you want to talk about. They tell me if I'm saying something that you disagree with. I am always open to learning. It's the most important thing we can do in this hobby is learn from other people. Be careful what other people say. Don't take it for granted that you know everything. But be careful and be attentive to what other people say, but also be a little bit skeptical because there's a lot of crazy stuff that gets thrown around about fish tanks. And some of it I have actually found, as crazy and wild as the idea is, that it's really something that's important, and I will sometimes implement it into my tanks as far as maybe a build or maybe moving things around or doing something different in a tank if I think that there's any kind of benefit to what the person is saying in my comments section. Some people will say crazy, ridiculous things that all of us know are not true. And then there's other people that have just sort of figured out, and I have done this myself, just figured out ways to make your tank healthier, things that you have not thought of. And we're going to talk about, in summation, these three fish that we just talked about, and we're going to do that in just a minute here. So to summarize what we talked about here regarding the three types of fish that we specifically outlined today in this particular video, I would say this to you, that all three have their benefits to your tank, and all three are essential for keeping a tank well balanced, clean, and just overall making sure that your tank is getting covered as far as food falling to the bottom of the tank that your fish have not consumed. The Plecostomus, cleaning the wood in your tank and making sure that the slime or any other organics that build up on there that we don't want on there, that they're constantly feeding along those wood lines. And they do skim the rocks and stuff like that. But if you notice in the wild, Plecostomus are found in South America along the Amazonian parts of the country, and you'll find that most of the time when you see someone out hunting these fish down, they will lift up a log or a piece of wood that's in the water, and there they are, 10, 15 of these fish just stuck to that log. And there's a reason for that. It's a great place for them to rest, number one, but it's also their biggest supply of food is found on those logs. And we don't think about that very much, but it is really important. And finally, the autocynklid. The autocynklid is something that's been around for a while, and like I said, these fish are great at keeping down that brown diatribe algae that all of us hate when we first set up a tank. I don't have problems with that, and it's not because I'm any better than anybody else. It's because I have learned over time how to make sure that that doesn't get started in the first place. And the biggest cause of that particular kind of algae is organics in your water, not enough water changes. I hear people say, oh, I haven't done a water change in 6 months and my tank is absolutely pristine. If you look close at those people's tanks, if you were to do an actual close-up on there, that could not be further from the truth. There really, really is stuff in those tanks that's undesirable, and if you had a well-balanced tank and you're not overfeeding and you have these type of fish that we just talked about, the three, the autocynklid, the Cory Catfish, and the Plecostomus, those types of fish are going to keep all of that stuff in check. thank you for joining me today. And again, I did want to say that I did forget about the snails. And also one other thing, I don't keep shrimp any longer. I've had a couple of tanks of shrimp over the years. I love shrimp, and I'm going to be setting up probably in the next couple of months maybe a 20-gallon cube or a 20-gallon of some sort of just shrimp, and I'm going to give it a try because I'm a little bit nervous about it. I haven't done it before. I know that shrimp can be very picky about their environment, but I'm going to study up on it. I'm going to bone up on it. I'm going to get to understand shrimp very well before I take on this build. But I do want to remind people that shrimp are also probably one of the most important assets to your tank for keeping your tank clean, because they're constantly working those little front claws and picking up food constantly 24/7. They're one of those, like I said, that don't rest. They just keep working and working and working. Like I said, I've had them in tanks before, but I've never been very successful at keeping them. But I do want to make sure I do mention them before I close out this video. Again, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the comment button. So important to me to hear your comments. Let's have an interactive conversation about what we just talked about. If you have anything to add, if you disagree with me on something, I am a very open person. I want to hear that from you, and I'm happy to learn from you. Anyways, thank you guys for joining me today and taking a few minutes out of your day. It's so important that I know and understand how important you guys are to me being successful at this YouTube channel. I'm not there yet. I'm not even close to where a lot of people are, but I'm getting better at this. I'm trying a lot harder to be a little bit more informational, have better angles and shots on these videos that I do produce, and I think I'm getting better at it. And if you guys can give me any other ideas, I had a lady tell me the other day when I was building that she saw more of my back than she saw of the actual build going on, and I got looking at the video. I should never release that video that way. That's something I should have had a second camera, which I have, lined up to take some angled shots, and I'm going to be doing a lot more of that and be better at that in the future. So thank you guys for all of your comments. They do help me. I'm not offended by any of it. It's constructive criticism, and we all need that. Anyways, thank you guys. Make sure you hit that bell up the top. I'm not sure if it's up here or over here or wherever it is, but if you do, then you'll know always when I have a new video coming out. It'll be a great reminder for you, and I hope you'll join me on the next one. Take care.